Okay, so it's raining outside. I'm going to have a little bit of fun with my green screen today and go back down memory lane and probably give people an idea, back again on that idea of cow-centered approach. People would have heard me talking about this because I studied it and it was my study topic for my Nuffield a year and a half ago. And I suppose it's become very fundamental to the work I do, both inside the farm gate and outside of it. And I'm a big fan of farm health programs and looking towards the future, what that will look like. I remember leaving practice, and I suppose my eyes were opened up to me as I travelled a lot globally, and understanding some of the challenges around global livestock production. And there are many of them there, but a lot of them are around the perceptions of what we do and welfare and what the future will look like. And there's several different arguments here around we need to increase production, of course, to feed a growing population. But there is the challenge of social license as well, and that's the right to farm, the permission you get. And this is a particular challenge in developed countries. So one of the fundamentals for me was trying to understand how you marry those two things together as part of, I suppose, what is a larger jigsaw puzzle around the challenges that we face in livestock production. I think it's an opportunity, and I learned an awful lot. And some of these things might seem incredibly simple. Sometimes this stuff can appear fluffy, and if you said it to me 10 years ago, I would have said it's fluffy stuff. But I've educated myself, and my thought process has changed, and that's just where I am with it. And I'm not worried about everyone agreeing with me, but I'm fundamentally beginning to really focus on these areas, and I think they're really key for a number of reasons. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what a cow-centered approach is. And you know, a cow-centered approach is really understanding the biology and behaviours of the animals in the system, optimising them for the animals, but also from the farmer sustainability and a profitability point of view of the business, and how that can merge that gap between social licence and the need for production and bringing consumers with us. So I'll go back to some of my learnings. And it starts with calves. And one of the things that definitely comes up time and time again when I work outside the farm gate is the perceptions of cow-calf separation. How can we take calves away from these dairy cows? Now, all over Europe, there's farms looking at calf-at-foot systems where they're milking cows with calves on them. And maybe in 10 years' time, there'll be more and more of that. But globally, the world over, we remove calves from cows. And I think we can really stand over that once we do a couple of fundamental things. And that's how we rear calves. And I've learned so much about that from a disease point of view and a management point of view. But most disease comes from failures or stressors in the system. And I talk about stress gaps. And that's where the optimal biology of the animal is, where they'd like to be and where we put them. And the larger that gap is sometimes, if it's under pressure, the manifestations we'll see is disease. So how do we minimize these stress gaps in the young calf? Well, optimizing biology is about understanding how much they feed, what they feed. They need a warm, dry lie. They like fresh air and they like space. And you'll hear me continually go back to this simple idea of space, particularly for any ruminant livestock, indoors. In pastoral systems, we're lucky outside that we can afford the animals that natural behaviours. But our animals spend a significant portion, or a very important portion of their life transitioning calving indoors. So it's still fundamental. So with calves, optimizing biology is about those simple things and getting it right. I feed that into calf shed design, calf health programs. But there's been another layer of it for me, and this is trying to understand new research around, and I suppose it's this idea of a life worth living. We always focus on welfare on the 5 pillars, but now we're talking about not just eliminating negative impacts on animals, but this idea that animals can have positive experiences as well. And what will they do to impact on their behaviour, well-being, productive capability, and the overall profitability of the farm by understanding them? So with calves, they're social animals. Negative behaviours that they experience can impact and they'll remember them. This research is showing us this. While calves spend about 85–90% of their young life lying down in their pre-weaning phase, they still socialise and they still like positive interactions. And I read research recently looking at the idea of stimuli in the environment to, I suppose, propagate or encourage more of that social behaviour. Calf brushes, your gym ball, and that type of thing. That can have a positive effect on calves. I think we'll see in the future more larger group housing as a way forward, and that brings us challenges around disease control. But ultimately, it will have probably a positive impact on calves, and that's what the research is showing us. So understanding the biology and behaviours of calves, and if we can maximise or optimise those within our systems, I think we have a very strong argument around why we do what we do when we separate calves, especially in more intensive systems where we have large numbers coming in the springtime. It's in our pastoral systems. It's very difficult to do anything else. But who knows what the research, and I have an open mind about all of this, but I really think that's the way forward with calves. The cow-centered approach, there was so little I knew about the cow if I go back through the years. I was really focused on disease and the process of disease. But disease is a manifestation of nutritional stress, the environment, or other stress factors in the cow. So I begin to realize that if I understand fundamentally what the cow wants, you can build a better environment for her, you can work better with her, she'll be more productive. She'll have increased longevity, she'll have more lactations. That means only one thing for farmers, that's more profitability. Keeping cows in the system longer is a more profitable and productive system. And there's no point shying away from the fact that these are production animals that we're working with to create a profit, because that's ultimately what we need to do. But we don't neglect the needs of those cows. By understanding the fundamentals of the cow, I think that's really important. And if you think from an environmental impact, the power of that, keeping cows in the system longer, more profitable for farmers, and creating environments that are better for the cow, it's a win-win all around. So to understand the cow, she's a gregarious, precocious species. So what's that mean? She's a herd animal. There's natural behaviours within the herd. They'll feed together, they'll lie down together. You'll see that in pastoral systems. It's the same indoors. And that's why space around feed space becomes very important. Space for lying down and cow comfort becomes important. She's an animal of prey, meaning she's binocular vision. She's always watching out for predators. She's got a flight zone. We can check that on our farms ourselves. When we step into it, she moves away. The larger that flight zone, the more stress and fear that animal has of humans. We don't want a zero flight zone either. You talk to some robot farmers and it becomes more difficult to move animals. So we need to have a slight flight zone, but we need to be conscious that the interaction between humans and animals can have a huge impact on their stress and well-being. And with disease, we're always trying to minimize down infection pressure, but maximize immunity. So maximize immunity means that stress must be limited. So minimizing stress in farming systems helps our cows to be healthier. That's really core. A cow's ear twice as sensitive as us. What does that mean? She doesn't like loud noises. She likes consistency in her routine. Because a farmer told me that a long, long time ago. It always stuck in my head. Consistent routines are what make for successful dairy farming, he said to me. Cows also move slowly. And this for me was so simple but so profound when I listened to Neil Chesterton talk about the optimal walking speed of a cow is 2.5 to 3 kilometers. Think about pushing that cow too hard and what it does. Fundamentally, we change her gait, her head goes up, and that's when she can stand on the stone. That's when we get issues in roadways. Prolonged, that can affect cow flow through parlours, and you're putting pressure on an animal that wants to walk slowly. So that's fundamental when it comes to lameness, is looking at optimizing the conditions that the cow wants to build better systems. That's very relevant for pastoral grazing systems. We're moving in cows twice a day to milking. That space in the collecting yard for normal herd hierarchies to be developed. The dominant cows, we're not putting pressure on cows. Pressure puts pressure on their feet, and prolonged pressure disimproves cow flow through the parlour. It makes all that a very stressful event. And do not underestimate, and I've personal experience of seeing this in farm, of the impact that has on immunity and the ability for those animals to fight infections and maybe succumb to them. It's very simple stuff. But one of the things about a cow is she has a daily time budget, whether it's outside or indoors. She likes to spend a pretty simple day, a lot of it lying down and ruminating. The more we can maximize that, the more productive a cow can be. For that, indoors in particular, we need to make sure there's a space for each cow to lie down. And most of us have cubicles, so the bedding material that the cow lies on is comfortable, the space is adequate, the rump rails, the neck rails, all those sort of things are set up to design for that cow to lie down. It can be a challenge when you have different sized cows on farm, but we want cows to lie down and get up as easy as possible. Even space indoors has a massive impact on behaviours of hierarchies. You watch that water trough in the corner. Water, fundamental to cows. We're feeding the rumen and those bugs. It's a fermentation vat. Clean available water is so important. But you watch that water trough in the corner with no space around it. The less dominant cows don't get in to drink water. They don't get to the feed space. Remember, cows are a herd species. They feed and lie down together. So space indoors for me is really, really critical. Along with the simple things like keeping it dry and having fresh air, just like our calves. So cows are, they like to be comfortable. Comfort will pay us back. Having fresh air in farming systems indoors. Light, cows are responsive to light. You know, they like a certain amount of light during the day and a certain amount of dark. Over the last couple of weeks, we've seen temperatures rise. Someone else pointed out to me, I wrote an article about heat and stress in cows, that my parameters were probably too high, that at 20, 21 degrees, cows suffer heat stress. That's because they have an ambient temperature, a temperature where they're comfortable at between 5 to 10 degrees. Cows prefer colder weather. It's simple because they have a rumen that's fermenting and it's hot and it's doing a lot of work. That cow is like a central heating system in her. She prefers colder temperatures. Heat stresses out cows. They have smaller lungs than other animals. They're poor dissipators of that heat. In pastoral systems, it's about water. Indoors, this is a real challenge around the world where we look at fans, sprinklers. And this is why maybe in pasture-based systems we have such opportunities around the environment that we work with in cows. That doesn't mean that we have a free rein. We still, as I said at the beginning, house cows at a critical time of year where they're transitioning, going through their greatest transition. Ultimately, a good transition will mean a cow will calve down, begin her lactation cycle, increase dry matter intake, start producing milk, go back and calf again. It might sound like very simple here to me, the way I'm describing it, but that simple process of allowing all those fundamental behaviours in that make sure that she can achieve it. Particularly with heifers coming in, understanding that dynamic of heifers coming in to a herd. Herd size, herd groups, cows like between 50 and 100 cows, with bigger numbers can create challenges. We must think about all these, and that's what I think about when I'm designing systems and understanding where challenges are. So if we understand the daily time budget of a cow, we understand her biological needs, we can really build an ideal system or alter the existing systems we have for happier, healthier cows. That means more profitable farming. That means reduction of stress. That means the increase of dry matter intake, which drives our productive capacity. Of course, the feed has to be right, the genetics has to be right, but these fundamentally simple things can have such an impact on how that cow performs, the herd performs, and the profitability of the overall herd. Finally, human-cow interactions. If I went back 10 years ago, I would be a bad stock person. We all know natural stock people who are excellent at moving, handling animals, they're calm, they're patient. I've had to go back and learn all these behaviours myself and look at my negative characteristics, moving too fast, being impatient, and how that is poor around animals. I looked at psychometric tests, identifying characteristics of people that are suitable to work with animals, and therefore identifying people who are not suitable, maybe more importantly, identify people who need more training. Okay, that's sort of a summary, and these are the characteristics behind me. That's sort of a summary of, I suppose, the cow-centered approach, a little trip down memory lane, where I'm going to with a lot of what I do around my farm programs now. Of course, disease and vaccination, all those things are really important, nutrition, building the right environments. But fundamentally, understanding the biological and behavioural needs of the animals in the system and how our interactions with them are really key as well. Remember, negative behaviours by stock people have a negative impact on cows, and it's a vicious cycle. But positive behaviour has a positive impact on cows. And cows, just like dogs and every other animal, has a positive impact on the people working with them. I think that's a powerful selling tool for the future of farming as well. We have lots of challenges around AMR, environmental efficiency, and of course ensuring that people's perceptions of agriculture are right. That's why I think cow-centered approach is a way, and that's why I design and build the programs that I do based on that very simple premises of making the life better for a cow. She'll be more productive, she'll live longer, she'll make you more profitable as a farmer, and I think we have a good story, like we have a great story for the consumer of the future. So a trip down memory lane, some of my thoughts around what a cow-centered approach is. Happy, safe farming.